I'm not up here this morning preaching against kickboxing, but I think this might have a little application there. Be someone that's easy to get along with. Not that's so tolerant of wrong views that he compromises. Don't hear me saying that. That's not what I'm saying. But yet someone who doesn't walk through life looking for someone to fight with. Because that's not what church is about. That's not what Christian living is about. Gentle. Good word to follow up. Not being pugnacious. Gentle means kind or soft or moderate. Not a doormat. Jesus was not a doormat, yet Jesus was gentle. What did he say in the Sermon on the Mount? Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Meek people are not doormats. They're gentle people. That's the kind of a person that I believe can relate easily to other people. An humble person. Humility fits into that qualification. One that's not sold on himself and so prideful and arrogant that you can't have a decent conversation with the man. That it's clouded his view of himself and other people because he's so prideful in himself. And I've seen pastors like that too. So beware. That's what the Lord is saying here in this passage of Scripture. Free from the love of money. Wow, I wish that it said free from money. I mean, that we didn't need it anymore. Somehow if you were going to be a pastor, you didn't need money. No, that's not what it says. And you've known people, and I've known people that were so in love with the dollar that their whole life circled around it. They were in love with it. To me, it's a necessity. Got to pay your rent. Got to pay your gas when I pull up at the gas pump. Got to pay for your food. Got to provide for your family, certainly. A worker is worthy of his hire. That's what the Scripture teaches, does it not? But he doesn't need to be the kind of person that obviously is in love with the dollar and everything the dollar can buy. That's the way the world looks. We got enough of that around us, do we not? We don't need a pastor that's living that kind of lifestyle. It implies greed and selfishness. The passage on deacons says, not fond of sordid gain. Sordid means dirty or foul. That he's not come to the money he has in a crooked way, an unchristian way. I really believe this. What oftentimes shows up in a church budget as a salary for a pastor, a staff person, actually is more of a ministry to that family. And the pastor needs to look at it that way. It's the church ministering to their under shepherd. They can't buy him. A good pastor can't be bought. Doesn't matter what the salary is. He's not living for money. He needs money, some, in order to live, but he's not living for that. But the church that's in love with the servant of God and wants to do her best for him is willing to do whatever she can to minister to the needs, I said, of that pastor. That puts it all in a proper perspective from his viewpoint and from the church's viewpoint. When you see it as a ministry to your pastor and not as a salary, then he's free to be a minister and not a hireling. There's a difference. And there's a difference in the life of the church as well. Verse 4, very interesting passage because 4 and 5 really go together. In fact, some translations of Scripture have verse 5 in parenthesis. It's a parenthetical statement relating to what he's about to teach in verse 4. He must be one who manages his own household well, keeping his children under control with all dignity. This teaching is speaking of the stewardship, I believe, of the overseer to his family, in respect to his family. You see, when my son left home and went off to college, I realized at that moment that he really didn't belong to me. He never had. He was loaned to me as a gift, a trust by God. And God wanted me, during the time he was at home, I still try to practice this even though he's long gone, as being a good steward in that young man's life. And in a church, doesn't belong to the pastor. It belongs to God. But for a particular period of time, known in advance only by God, he gives that pastor a stewardship of ministry to the family of God. Fellowship of the Rockies and Rifle. A pastor needs to be a good teacher at home. Raise up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. What that means is mature. Old means mature. Some come to maturity much earlier than others. I've known some men or women that never came to maturity regardless of chronological age, and you've known people like that too. But it's a promise of God. It's an instruction of God as to how we're to raise up our children. And I'm going to tell you what. You look at a pastor's family, my friends, you're going to know a lot about that guy. Do they have respect for their father and mother and what they do? The calling that God has placed in the life of the pastor? Is there respect there for them? Do they, although they don't understand everything that he goes through or says or does at the church, they really don't understand why he spends so much time there. Is there that general teachability on the part of those children? Or is there a rebellion at home? Now, some of that has to do with the nature of a child. There's no two of them alike, right? They're all different. But much of that has to do with the way the parents relate to those children in the home. Are they taught the things of God at night, beginning at an early age? Are they made to see when things happen in a family that God is at work? Do they learn faith from their parents, or do they have to go to the Sunday school teacher at church to try to learn them? They should learn them at home. That's what I'm talking about. You can tell a lot about a guy from how he handles his family. And there's no perfect daddy. I sure wasn't one. I loved mine, but he wasn't perfect either. My son, I watch him with my grandkids. He's not perfect either. There's no such thing as a perfect father. But the goal is God honoring, God teaching, God instructing in the home. And that's what you're looking for in a pastor. And he goes on in verse 5 to amplify why that's important. It's not only important for the family at home, but what does he say in verse 5? But if a man does not know how to manage be a good steward, manage his own household, how will he take care of the church of God? Pretty good question. You want to know how he's going to relate to people in the church? Watch how he relates to his wife. Watch how he relates to the children. Watch how they relate to him. A good barometer, a good indication. That's what Paul's saying. A trust. A sacred trust from God is the job of the under-shepherd, the pastor, the elder, the overseer. A sacred trust from God never belongs to me, never belonged to them, but belongs to God. Look at verse 6. Not a new convert, lest he